All right, guys, check. Let's continue on with some biological psychology. This is sexuality and sexual development. A lot of questions I have in this section. All right, so sexuality and sexual development. Where's the end point there? So, sexual development. What makes us male or female biologically? Chromosomes. Female XX, male XY. Genetics. Little side note, men are more colorblind. Women have more genetic material information. Okay. So yeah, what makes us male or female biologically? The sexual development. What makes us male or female biologically are chromosomes. XX, which is female chromosomes, and males have an XY chromosomes. Prenatal stages. Gonad development. We think of gonads or testicles. No, gonad. So prenatal stages, gonad development. Ovaries are the female gonads. The testes are the male gonads. So ovaries are female gonads. Testes are male gonads. So gonad development, internal organ development, external genitalia development, and puberty. So prenatal stages are gonad development, internal organ development, external genitalia development, and puberty. Development of the gonads. Again, gonads are the ovaries in the females, testes in males. Up until the 6th week of development, no sexual differentiation has occurred. Up until the 6th week of development, so up until a month and a half, no sexual differentiation has occurred. Ovaries and testes are both able to develop homologous structures born from the same stuff. At 6 weeks, the sex-determining region of the Y chromosome becomes active. The SRY. The SRY. Pretty sure I have it written down what the SRY means. I should at least have it written down somewhere. The SRY. Anyway. At 6 weeks, the sex-determining region of the Y chromosome becomes active, produces testes-determining factor, causes the development of testes. Without the SRY gene working, the ovaries develop. So at 6 weeks, the sex-determining region of the Y chromosome becomes active. The SRY becomes active, produces testes-determining factor, causes the development of the testes. Without the SRY becoming active, without the SRY gene working, the ovaries develop. So when a fetus is born, if nothing occurs, it's going to be a woman. If the SRY becomes active, that Y chromosome, the sex-determining region of the Y chromosome becomes active, produces the testes-determining factor, causes the development of the testes. Without the SRY gene working, ovaries develop. If the SRY gene is inserted into genetically female mice, testes develop. If the SRY gene is inserted into genetically female mice, testes develop. Internal organ development. Up until about 3 months, all fetuses have male Wolffian system and a female Müllerian system. So all fetuses have what they call the Wolffian, Wolf, Wolffian system, and a female Mullerian system. A Wolffian system, which is the male system, and the Mullerian female system, up until about 3 months. This is the internal organ development. Up until about 3 months, all fetuses have male Wolffian system and a female Mullerian system. Internal organ development continued. In males, testosterone causes Wolffian system to fully develop. Anti-Mullerian hormone causes the degeneration of the female system. So remember, the female system is sort of this default system. The female system is default. If nothing changes occur, the SRY chromosome doesn't become active. If this sex determining region of the Y chromosome does not become active, then the woman, the Mullerian system is just there. It becomes, this fetus becomes a female. Remember, internal organ development in males, testosterone causes Wolffian system to fully develop. An anti-female, an anti-Mullerian hormone causes the degeneration of the female system. In females, the lack of testosterone leads to the degeneration of the Wolffian system. So just the lack of testosterone leads to the degeneration of the Wolffian system, which is the male system. Without anti-Mullerian hormone, so without the anti-Mullerian hormone, the female system will develop. A trend in sexual development. In order to develop a biological male, hormones need to influence the fetus. The testosterone hormones need to influence the fetus. If no hormones interact with the fetus, a female will develop. Think of the females as the default. Yeah, pretty much what I just said. Unless something changes the course of development, a female will develop automatically. Pretty interesting, right? Something I want to, I don't know. Do we just believe science? I don't know. External genitalia. Remember, right now we had internal organ development. Now we have external genitalia. Males, penis and scrotum. Females, the labia, the clitoris, outer part of the vagina. In males, testosterone and 5-alpha reductase combine to form 5-alpha dihydrotestosterone. So in males, testosterone and 5-alpha reductase combine to form 5-alpha dihydrotestosterone. It causes the formation of male external genitalia. Interesting, right? So testosterone and 5-alpha reductase combine to form 5-alpha dihydrotestosterone. It causes the formation of the male external genitalia. In females, remember, no hormone activity is needed. The lack of activity leads to the formation of female external genitalia. So the lack of activity. No hormone activity is needed for the female genitalia. The lack of activity leads to the formation of female external genitalia. All right, guys, now to puberty. Sexual maturation. Spermarchy. So spermarchy is first ejaculation for males. Menarche is the first menstrual period for females. So spermarchy is the first ejaculation for males. Menarche is the first menstrual period for females. So Pfeiffer, 1936. I guess some sort of the doctor, I guess someone named Pfeiffer in 1936. This person observed that testicular implants in neonatal female rats blocked ovulation. So in 1936, somebody named Pfeiffer observed that testicular implants in neonatal female rats, so like newborn female rats, neonatal female rats, the testicular implants in neonatal female rats blocked ovulation. attributed this to hormone differences, concluded that there are hormonal differences between males and females. Since the pituitary gland releases these hormones, males and females must have different pituitary glands. That's more of a question. This is like what this Pfeiffer observation assumed that the pituitary gland releases hormones, right? But that males and females must have different pituitary glands. Because they assume that this must be attributed to some hormone differences, and that there are hormonal differences between males and females. And since the pituitary gland releases hormones, males and females must have different pituitary glands, because when they observed testicular implants in neonatal female rats, it blocked what should have been able to ovulate. It blocked their ovulation process. So is the pituitary gland where sexual differences exist? A later study transplanted adult male rat pituitary glands into adult females. So they said, well, let's figure it out. Let's do a pituitary transplant from adult male rats into adult female rats. A pituitary gland transplant. They found that ovulation continued normally. Both male and female pituitary glands are capable of producing the same hormones. The difference must be in the signals from the brain to the pituitary gland. So the difference must be in the signals from the brain to the pituitary gland. All right, some animal studies. Sexual development. Castrated adult male rats cannot ovulate even if a female system is implanted surgically. So castrated male rats, castrated adult male rats cannot ovulate even if a female system is implanted surgically. Castrated baby male rats can ovulate if a female system is implanted surgically. Testosterone treatment in adult female rats stop ovulation. Can be overcome with brain stimulation. Testosterone treatment in baby female rats stops ovulation. Cannot be reversed. So testosterone treatment in adult female rats stops ovulation. Can be overcome with brain stimulation. Testosterone treatment in baby female rats stops ovulation, and so they can't no longer ovulate. But testosterone treatment in adult female rats, it might stop ovulation, but it can be overcome because they already have they've already had that process of where they're able to ovulate. But if you do it early enough, when they did testosterone treatment in the baby female rats, it stopped their ovulation, but it stopped it forever. It's as if it's like a muscle that never got to grow enough, so it's just deformed, like a deformity in the growth. I'll put a little note right here: deformity in the growth. As opposed to like if they did testosterone treatment in adult female rats, it stopped ovulation for a time, but it was able to be overcome again. Deformity in growth. Interesting, right? So let me go back up here. Animal studies, sexual development. Castrated adult male rats cannot ovulate even if a female system is implanted surgically. Castrated baby male rats can ovulate if a female system is implanted surgically. So it's that idea. This idea of sexual development is like if you get to them early enough, you could change their system, and it'll affect it forever. Differentiation impacts behavior. Impacts behavior. So something called lordosis. Female animals arc their spine when touched on the back to aid in sexual intercourse. What's called copulation. I don't know if you guys know about the word copulate or copulation. That means to have sexual intercourse. It's a scientific word for sexual intercourse. Copulation. Copulate. Copulate or copulation. Copulation. So something called lordosis. Is when the female animals arc their spine when touched on the back. They get excited, like they're in heat, sort of, and like, what we call doggy style. They arc their back and they pretty much are giving up their behind so you could penetrate them. So that's called lordosis. That's for the females. The female animals arc their spine or arch their spine when touched on the back to aid in copulation. They're offering themselves to the man or to the male. And there's something called mounting. Male animals mount other animals to aid in copulation. Castration of baby male rats leads to a suppression of mounting and an increase in lordosis. Sometimes, though, it's kind of weird, right? It's like, okay, if you castrate a male who usually would do the penetrating, if you castrate them when they're when they're babies and they're male, like they're supposed to do the penetrating, they're males, but if you castrate them, it leads to a suppression of these baby male rats to want to mount a female who's giving up giving up, or who arches their back, right? And it says it does the opposite and increases in lordosis. Now they end up wanting to give their back up, which is sort of weird if you think about it. How about just not be interested in sex? Because it's even arbitrary, right? Because it's only sometimes. It was like I put sometimes here because I heard my professor say sometimes, which is sort of a non-scientific sort of observation. So testosterone exposure for baby female rats leads to a suppression of lordosis and an increase in mounting. So these things are doing the opposite, right? I'm not gonna lie, in class I don't really pay attention as much as I have to follow along and like just write, fill in the gaps. Because our notes look like this, we just fill in the gaps. Like most of the stuff is his writing, and then we just fill in the gaps. So I'm more just focused on making sure I fill in the gaps, and I know I do that. Right now I'm learning as I'm doing this sort of a video, recording myself. I just find it kind of interesting. All right, organizational versus activational effects. So organizational, hormones messing with development. So when it says organizational versus activational effects, the organizational is hormones messing with development, and the activational effects are the behaviors. So organizational effect. Hormones play an organizational role during development. So hormones messing with development. So hormones play an organizational role during development that will set the stage for later life events. So hormones messing with development. So organizational effect. Hormones play an organizational role, meaning hormones mess with development. So hormones play an organizational role during development that will set the stage for later life events. Activational effect, the behavior. Hormones stimulate certain behaviors at a certain time. That's the activational effect. Hormones stimulate certain behaviors at a certain time. So testosterone, organizational, the organizational effect of testosterone masculinizes the developing brain and body. Hormones messing with development. So testosterone, the organizational effect of testosterone, it masculinizes the developing brain and body. The behaviors, the activational effect of testosterone stimulates mounting. Male reproductive system. The male reproductive system, the testes produce testosterone. Endocrine system produces luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, which is FSH. These coordinate proper sperm production. So the male reproductive system, the testes produce testosterone. The testes produce testosterone. Endocrine system produces luteinizing hormone. The endocrine system produces luteinizing hormone, the LH, and the follicle stimulating hormone, the FSH. So the endocrine system produces luteinizing hormone, LH, and follicle stimulating hormone, the FSH. And these coordinate proper sperm production. The endocrine system the endocrine system is the producer of the luteinizing hormone and the follicle stimulating hormone, which coordinate proper sperm production. Obviously, the testes produce testosterone too. So the luteinizing hormone and the follicle stimulating hormone coordinate proper sperm production, and they're produced by the endocrine system. Female reproductive system. Menstrual cycle is coordinated by many of the same hormones found in males and some different ones. Menstrual cycle is coordinated by many of the same hormones found in males and some different ones. Anyway, let me go back up here. A little note. Libido equals testosterone. All right, so the menstrual cycle. FSH, which is the follicle stimulating hormone. So the FSH is secreted at the beginning of the menstrual cycle. FSH is secreted at the beginning of the cycle. So production causes ovaries to production causes ovaries to develop follicles. Okay, causes the ovaries. So the FSH, the follicle stimulating hormone, is secreted at the beginning of the cycle of the menstrual cycle. The follicle stimulating hormone is secreted at the beginning of the cycle of the menstrual cycle. Causes the ovaries to develop follicles, which contain an ovum. One follicle begins to develop more rapidly than others, and estrogens are released. Estrogens prevent the other follicles from developing. Estrogens prevent other follicles from developing. So a follicle is a crust growth around ovum to ripen. So a follicle is a crust growth around the ovum to ripen. So the menstrual cycle it's coordinated by many of the same hormones found in males and some different ones. So the follicle stimulating hormone is secreted at the beginning of the menstrual cycle. It causes the ovaries to develop follicles which contain an ovum. One follicle begins to develop more rapidly than others, and estrogens are released. Estrogens prevent the other follicles from developing. So one of these eggs, or one of these I don't know if I call them ovums, or one of these, I don't know if it's ovary, one of the ovums I think develops, right? There's a bunch of them within like a ovary. There's a bunch of little, I guess let's call them eggs. But one follicle is like the first one who could develop a follicle, the fastest will get released. And then estrogen prevents the other follicles from developing. Estrogen prevents these other little eggs from competing with this one who already grew its follicle. The estrogen helps it like keep the other ones from developing a follicle, so that one wins the competition to go meet the sperm, right? And then so estrogen. Okay, so there's like a little note right here. There's a story right here. Estrogen blockers help get more than one egg to freeze. More ovum can develop follicles. So estrogen, remember, so whenever they want, like so think about when you're getting older and you want to freeze some of your ovaries or your ovum, right? So they give somebody estrogen blockers, so the estrogen don't prevent these other, I guess, eggs to develop follicles. You want them to develop follicles so you can freeze them and they'll be ready to, to do this scientific way of getting a woman pregnant, right? You want to freeze her eggs for the future. And so that's what how estrogen blockers work, because estrogen. So when one follicle begins to develop more rapidly than the others, and estrogens are released, allowing to keep the other ones from forming follicles. So estrogens prevent the other follicles from developing. But when you give somebody estrogen blockers to freeze their eggs, it allows other follicles to be able. So you have a better chance of getting pregnant because you have more of these available ovum that have follicles. That's interesting, right? So next, increasing estrogen levels stimulate the release of luteinizing hormone. Remember, the luteinizing hormone, remember, it does the same thing for males and females. So the endocrine system produces luteinizing hormones, the LH, and the follicle stimulating hormone, FSH, that coordinate proper sperm production. So increasing estrogen levels stimulate the release of luteinizing hormone. The luteinizing hormone increase causes ovulation. So the LH increase causes ovulation. The remaining empty follicles is now called the corpus luteum. The shell the egg breaks out of. So the corpus luteum, the remaining empty follicle, is now called the. So the LH causes ovulation. So the egg or whatever ovulates and no longer needs that shell. So the empty follicle is now called the corpus luteum. It's the shell egg, because the shell egg that breaks out. It's the shell the egg breaks out of. The corpus luteum is the shell the egg breaks out of. It's the remaining empty follicle. It's now called the corpus luteum, which is the shell the egg broke out of. And then, so this thing releases progesterone. Progesterone is considered the pregnancy hormone. It prevents the formation of more follicles and causes a thickening of the uterine lining. The thickening of the uterine lining. Think of a more comfortable pillow for the egg to grow in, a softer pillow for fetus growth. So the uterine lining gets thicker. So the release of the progesterone, the pregnancy hormone, prevents the formation of more follicles and causes a thickening of the uterine lining. So the egg can grow comfortably within this thing. If fertilization hasn't occurred, progesterone levels fall and the cycle repeats. If fertilization hasn't occurred, progesterone, the levels fall and the cycle repeats. The uterus gets thinner, allows for menstrual cycles, blood release, and the cycle repeats. So when the uterine lining, it'll get thinner again. The cycle will repeat. So it'll reset, it'll get thinner, and that allows for the menstrual cycle to repeat itself, blood release, and then the cycle repeats. Interesting. I'll keep going. Not sure. I don't want to stop right here. Yeah, I just stop right here. Yeah.